Welcome to Genomics Gupshup. Genomics Gupshup is an initiative by MapmyGenome to create a community around genomics and to simplify genomics for everyone. And we do this by bringing together experts from allied areas like medicine, genetic counseling, nutrition, fitness, and more. Please join us as we spread this word about this exciting science of genomics. And we are now available on your favorite podcast as well. Just search for Genomics Gupshup on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or Google Podcast. Today, we are very excited to have Dr. Piyush Ranjan on this episode number 56. Welcome to Genomics Gupshup, Dr. Piyush Ranjan. He is a distinguished gastroenterologist at Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi, and he has done his medical schooling from Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi, and subsequent training in the famous SGPGI Lucknow in 2003. He's a liver specialist with a keen interest in therapeutic endoscopy and ERCP, and he specializes in treatment of gastrointestinal problems like the liver diseases, and is an expert in many procedures like colonoscopy, endoscopy, ERCP, sigmoidoscopy, endo-ultrasound, capsule endoscopy, and so on. He has a very distinguished medical career with training at the best medical schools, and he has many publications in national and international journals and various awards and recognition. He's also a very active member of various professional bodies in the country and is an expert clinician with compassionate and caring towards his patients. He has a keen interest in therapeutic endoscopy, and his skills in this field match that of the best. Apart from medical interests, he's a philanthropist and he works for many social and charitable causes. Welcome to Genomics Gupshup, Dr. Piyush.
Thank you. Thank you for that very kind introduction.
So, Dr. Piyush, it's really nice to have you on this podcast. I just wanted to ask you if what made you what inspired you to become a doctor, and then how did you become a gastroenterologist?
So the first part was that I am a doctor by accident. When I finished my +2, I had an inclination towards taking humanities, and I was trying to get admission in economics course in Stephens College, which I could not. I did not realize that I had opted out of mathematics in the +2, so mathematics was required, and I could not get into economics course. So I got into history again. I was very interested in history. I took history in Hindu College, but after admission, I developed an illness, medical illness. By chance, it was jaundice, viral hepatitis, and it was quite severe. I was not able to join the course for about 2 months. And by that time, the result of MBBS, which I had given under the pressure of the family and all those things, my father was a physics teacher, so he wanted me to take science and subsequently either professional some course. So that is how it was. I ended up being 2 months late for joining this humanities course. So I ultimately joined MBBS because of an illness. And so it was not a choice. And the second part, becoming a gastroenterologist during my MD days, we had the unit in which I was in Maulana Azad Medical College. Dr. S.K. Jain was the unit head, and he was a gastroenterologist. So seeing him doing endoscopies, I was very enamored by those procedures, the ERCPs, taking out bile duct stones. So that is what attracted me towards gastroenterology. And there was GB Pant Hospital, which is a kind of twin hospital with Lok Nayak Hospital, the Maulana Azad Medical College. And it had got a very big gastroenterology department, and we had some common classes and teaching rounds. So I was very impressed with I was impressed with the gastroenterology and liver diseases. So that is how I went for gastroenterology examination after completing my MD.
Now it seems like everybody in India seems to have some problem either with their liver or like a fatty liver, or they have a problem with just issues with their gut, right? So do you think that this is something that has happened because of our lifestyle, or is it that we just didn't know earlier and now we are detecting it much more?
So you see, these are two things. The first thing is that the first point which you raised about fatty liver. So fatty liver as a cause of liver disease was first described in 1980. It was from Mayo Clinic that fatty liver disease was described. Before that, fatty liver disease was not a term which was in existence. And subsequently, it has been realized that currently fatty liver disease is the most common cause of liver cirrhosis. A large proportion, nearly 35% of Indian adults suffer from fatty liver disease. And with increasing obesity, so the second part is that it is linked definitely to our lifestyle. So first, there was a recognition, and then the lifestyle changes which has been there that have led to a rapid increase in adults, nearly 35% obesity. Children also have a similar proportion of obesity. So these are alarming features, alarming numbers, and the burden of liver disease, subsequent liver disease, is very high. And yes, definitely the lifestyle changes which have uh, due to our urban living, the eating habits, the sleeping habits, stress, and somehow all these things have been a causative factor in diseases like gastroesophageal reflux diseases, irritable bowel syndrome, a lot of functional bowel diseases, they are linked to these lifestyle changes.
Yeah, I think that's, I know there is obviously that, but do you think there are also genetic factors that we were not realizing over the last many, many years? Or is it, is it something that we were just, obviously, I think lifestyle is probably one of our major issues
You
that we
see,
have.
any disease which is a multifactorial disease happens early in people who are genetically predisposed. So if we again start with the example of fatty liver disease, then fatty liver disease, what was realized that the apparent risk factors, obesity, diabetes, hypertriglyceridemia, thyroid disorders, sedentary lifestyle. So these are considered to be the apparent risk factors for developing fatty liver disease and metabolic syndrome, which consists of hypertension, obesity, central obesity, that is the raised waist ratio. There are multiple uh, parameters which are taken into account to define metabolic syndrome. So these are the things which cause fatty liver. But there are two things here now. You see, first is that nearly a quarter of patients, that is 25% of patients who are not obese or do not have these risk factors, will also develop fatty liver disease. So are there certain factors which lead to predisposition? And once you develop fatty liver, then nearly one-third of patients go on to develop significant liver disease. So are there factors which drive the disease? So which are those factors? Therein, subsequently, as the story progresses, a lot of genetic factors are being unraveled. So currently, if we talk of fatty liver disease, there are two important genes which are now into kind of practice. There is a gene called PNPLA3 gene, which codes for a particular protein, and obviously all genes code for proteins, and then it plays some role in lipid metabolism, and that predisposes a person to develop fatty liver, and a person who has fatty liver is more at risk to develop liver cirrhosis. So this PNPLA3 gene has been found across the spectrum of liver diseases, like say if a person is having alcohol-related liver disease and has this PNPLA3 gene positive, he is also at risk to develop cirrhosis. A person with fatty liver disease who has PNPLA3 disease gene, if he is not obese, then also he develops more aggressive fatty liver disease at a young age. So this is the most important thing. And another gene is TMSF62. So again, this is a gene which regulates some iron metabolism. Iron is a kind of inflammatory factor, and it perpetuates inflammation in liver, which is caused by any agent. So PNPLA3 is important because there is significant work going on this direction in developing the small interfering RNA-based therapies for PNPLA3 disease. And we expect that in next 3 to 4 years, these this siRNA-based therapies would be in clinical trials. So that is the kind of take which I would give you on genetic this thing, that obviously you see there is a genetic factor in anything which you do. All the proteins which participate in say in inflammation, in the way the body reacts to any insult, is predetermined, like our inflammatory markers are predetermined. To give you a very simple example, another entirely different disease, say somebody develops acute pancreatitis, which is related to gallstones. Somebody develops mild pancreatitis, somebody develops severe pancreatitis. So again, in those things, there are studies which are working out whether the neutrophils, the primary cells which drive inflammation, they can be genetically different in different people, in people who develop severe disease versus people who develop mild disease. So it's very interesting, intriguing, and poorly understood as of now.
True. And I think, people like to say that, there is no such thing, because I saw this other person who has a really bad lifestyle and continues
Mm.
to, live till 90 and smokes and drinks and eats everything that they can. And I keep telling people that, different people are wired differently. You can't help, that's a lottery that you got, but you can change some of the other parameters that you can, right? Like you mentioned a lot
Yeah.
of the lifestyle
So
parameters
So
that if
these are
people
the
are aware.
diseases which occur because of the interaction between gene and the environment. So there is no one-to-one causality. So there are a lot of other epigenetic factors which work, like high protein, high fat intake, and all these things lead to epigenetic changes which predispose you to develop cancer, colonic cancer. So the examples are myriad.
Mm.
And obviously, these two in a multifactorial disease, especially in a liver disease, these two factors. So having just genetic predisposition is not enough. Even in
Exactly.
genetic diseases, having genetic predisposition is not enough. So the expression and the other expressivity of the proteins and the concurrent environmental factors like diet and all those things also come into play.
Okay.
So just to quote the famous Shakespearean this thing, Julius from Julius says that the fault, dear Brutus, lies in our stars. So the fault may be lying in our genes, we do not know, but yes, there is a link there.
I think the bigger fault is what we do ourselves, right? Like with the lifestyle. I mean, some.
Absolutely, you cannot change your genes. Hopefully, since some time there are already therapies going on, but to a large extent, you cannot change your genes. The epigenetic factors can be changed. After all, these epigenetic factors function through your genes only,
one
exert their effect through your DNA only.
one of the interesting things, so obviously for a person, they are able to change, what they eat or how they, exercise and all of that. But for people who live, let's say, in a highly polluted city, for instance, right? Do you all see any direct correlation with that and liver disease? Is there some environmental factors also that are clearly visible? I mean, in terms of just what's going on in our gut and the environment.
You see, gut has got a very direct relation with fatty liver disease, but environmental pollution I don't think has been studied. I mean, when I say this,
Mm.
if you look at if you Google it, there might be 10 studies, I don't know. But definitely these are not important studies which have been at the forefront, other than the fact that pollution forces you to stay back at home.
Mm. That's a good way
With
of.
that pollution decreases your exercise, you go out less often, especially the elderly. And it is definitely known that elderly people who do not exercise because of pollution are at risk of cardiovascular diseases. So fatty liver disease again is if you look at it as a part of metabolic syndrome, it is a cardiovascular risk factor also. It is very interesting to note that patients with fatty liver, till they have this fatty liver, they do not die of fatty liver. The
Mm.
risk is because of the cardiovascular diseases. You can develop myocardial infarction, you can develop stroke. So the direct link of pollution is not there, but with this microparticles entering into our body and initiating this inflammatory cascade, there might be a link which has not been studied till now. The other part, the gut interaction with liver, that is very well established, and gut microbiome is one factor which has been causally related, which has been studied and to both obesity and fatty liver disease. So that is another huge field in itself, which is just begun to explode. If you look at it, more than 1 lakh papers every year from in the gut microbiome on related papers are out there in the
Very
research domain.
Yeah, I mean, I remember because we are doing the gut microbiome test, and we saw that just a few years ago, I think the correlations between disease risk and the gut were a little bit unclear. And now I think like you mentioned, I think there are so many publications on the gut microbiome that pretty much everything is connected to the gut, right? So in many ways, I think all our those movies that were I think what was that? There was one on entirely on the gut, right? Like Amitabh Bachchan's movie.
And
Uh,
that was PICU. We are
Piku.
talking about
Yes,
PICU
yes.
that is related to constipation
Correct, correct.
and old age related constipation. So, but here I would say that, I mean, probably, I mean, this is a vast generalization. If you look at our ancient Indian traditional medical practice, they harp a lot about gut well-being and different enemas and all those things, colon cleansing agents. So there might be a link, so which is not known. Obviously, that science has not been pursued in a rigorous way so that that can be proven. But yes, there is a definite link there in gut and disease.
Yeah,
So
I
many
guess
diseases.
Ayurveda all I mean does
That is
look
what
at
I was
yeah.
referring to, our ancient medical practice of Ayurveda, naturopathy. All these things talk about a high fiber intake, which promotes your gut bacterial diversity. Good bacteria, so-called the quote unquote good bacteria, get better, and there is a bacterial diversity which takes care of the diseases, and the adoption of so-called Western diet, which is low on fiber, which is high on meat, that decreases the bacterial diversity and promotes some bad bacteria. But the problem is that the gut microbiome, the studying
Mm.
is very complicated, and the number of bacteria you see are staggering, 10 to raised to the power 13 billion bacteria. And if you go to the individual species, then the factors are different and they're very contradictory results. So still, that is a classic situation of putting the cart before the horse, that even before you know the mechanism of action, there are therapies based on gut bacterial manipulation which are in place. And we are also practicing, I'm referring to fecal microbiota transplantation. This is used in so many diseases, and we do not know how it works, but it works. So that there is the question, who is a good donor for fecal mycobacteria transplant, because we do not have a very good tool of knowing what is wrong in the person who needs a transplant and what is the bacteria actually which we are transferring to the recipient. So there is a clearly huge gap, and there is a huge opportunity of research to all bring this all out. And I expect that the genetic testing, the metagenomics as it is known as, because right now we are talking about microbiome in terms of the different phyla, the large groups of bacteria, and then slowly moving on to the different genus and species. And once you are able to map all these genomes of these bacteria, then probably you will be able to pinpoint certain bacteria which are good.
Right. I think our understanding has obviously improved over the years, but there is a
There is a
lot
long
more
way.
that can be done. Correct. I mean, I remember that I think about 10 years ago, I remember we were talking about the gut microbiome. And at that point, it was, you could understand that, yes, you can sequence and you can understand that, there is bacteria and there is different diversity. You can understand the evenness of the population. I mean, whether what is there, what is not there. But I think today we are seeing, for instance, there are many that are implicated both in terms of mood, energy, but also disease risk, right? And that is getting better. So hopefully, I think there'll be more studies,
Right.
especially on the Indian population, that will help us to.
You're right. Some general observations. What you're referring is that the days when the gut bacteria was studied using 16S
Correct.
ribosome classification. So now, as we are moving to the whole genome sequencings, then you are able to do it better. But the problem is that to understand the effect of one particular bacteria or the effect as a whole, that
Mm.
is very important. Dysbiosis is a different thing, and one bacteria causing this disease is a different thing. And again, this has to be replicated in different population over large populations. So these small studies, but yes, there is a lot of work going on in this field, and hopefully something concrete will come out. Probiotics have been used for ages, and we know that they're not very transformational medicines, but yes, they have some benefits, and certain diets which we see which are rich in probiotics have their own effects. If we move around from apart, is a little far away from gastroenterology, the neurology connection, the Parkinson disease is this is one of the diseases which is said to be very closely related to the gut bacteria. So the gut-brain axis, which is always there. We talk about gut-brain axis. So microbiome plays a big role in regulating this gut-brain axis.
There's a lot of work that we can still do further, I think, in terms of the gut.
It is already on. So to have a definitive answer, I think next 5 years would be very exciting to see what the results are.
True. I think, see, for us, at least at MapmyGenome, we decided to start with metagenomics because we felt that, maybe there are other factors also, right? For some people, maybe there are other things other than the bacteria that you might be looking at. But clearly, obviously, I think from a cost perspective, I think people are still preferring to do the 16S because it's ultimately, I think, cost plays a role.
I don't think that is going to give you anything. So metagenomics is the way to progress ahead. The bigger question there is whether what you are seeing is the cause or it's the effect of the disease. So that is again the chicken story. So what you find, whether that is the causative agent or it is the result of the disease condition, that we do not know.
True, that's true. So, so specifically, I think if we can, you mentioned about the Parkinson's, but for the liver function, is there very clear? I mean, do you think what are the next steps for people who are studying, let's say, the gut microbiome, in the future? Do you think that we can look at any specific area of research in this? Or?
Gut, you see, if you look at the GI diseases as a whole, gut microbiome is closely related to obesity. So there are very elegant studies which say that once completely germ-free mice is given a stool transplant from a OB mice, which is a fat mice, then he develops a obese phenotype. So that a mice experimental animal, which is free of any bacteria in the gut, if stool from another mice, which is obese mice, is transplanted. OB mice is a model of obesity in mice. So if that is transplanted, the recipient mice develops obese phenotype. So that was the starting point, and then subsequently we know that stool transplants in humans from lean people to obese people to change the mycobacteria, to the bacterial flora, have led to cure of obesity, control of obesity. So these are the things which got the thing started. And the bacteroids to firmicutes ratio, this is something which is known as this was thought of in the initial part of the studies, but subsequently there were contradictory results of this bacteroids to firmicutes. Bacteroids and firmicutes, these are the two dominant phyla in the human GI tract. And there are a lot of ways in which these can affect. So you see, the thing is that these gut bacteria produce a large amount of products which modulate a number of processes. The important things are production of short chain fatty acids. That is one thing. So short chain fatty acids further controls a lot of downstream functions, including the fat metabolism, the energy metabolism, the health of the colonic epithelial cells, and so on. And bile acid metabolism is another thing. So this FGF receptors, TGR5 receptors, these are the receptors on which obesity drugs, the fatty liver drugs, are working on. And it has been shown that these receptors are influenced by the gut bacteria also. So there is another link. So it is very difficult to explain these things without graphics and those things. But I'm just telling you that there are concrete evidences, lines of evidences in this. And these bacteria do one very important thing, that they control the gut permeability. So once gut permeability is increased, then this lipopolysaccharide producing bacteria, they enter the body and they kind of cause endotoxemia, silent endotoxemia. So obesity, when we say, is an inflammatory condition. Obesity kind of induces inflammation, an inflammatory state in the entire body. You just imagine that there is a bad bacteria in the gut. It has caused increased permeability of gut. So things which should not have gone into the bloodstream have entered the bloodstream. So the body's inflammatory system is put to work. It works over time to contain that like foreign agent, and in turn starts harming itself.
Mhm.
So fatty liver is kind of a product because of this endotoxemia, right?
Right.
This chronic inflammatory state. This is a very simplified way which I am telling you. And again, due to interference in a lot of this fat metabolism, which I said, the absorption of lipid and overall the energy extraction. Again, this is a very, I mean, in laid language, we say that there is a person who eats so much and still isn't fat, and I don't eat anything, still I am fat. So here again, the gut microbiome might be playing a role in energy extraction,
Mhm.
right? So this is another link which is there in fatty liver disease. And if we move away from fatty liver disease, the field of inflammatory bowel disease, the Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, that is a lot of, again, influence of gut bacteria there in the pathogenesis of the disease and the severity of disease as well.
So do you actually do the fecal transplants over here?
Yes, we
Yeah.
have done.
Yeah.
There are a lot of papers. If you look at the papers, we have done, we have not published, unfortunately. It is in an abstract form. We
Mhm.
did we have done fecal microbiota. If you look at the fecal microbiota transplant, it is the FDA, US FDA gives approval only for one indication, that is the Clostridium difficile infection, the resistant Clostridium difficile infection. We have done it for Clostridium difficile infection also, an elderly patient that was extensively covered by the media. We shared it that was some time back. And then two other indications which are there for which we have done. The most important thing is that for severe alcoholic hepatitis, you see, alcohol causes gut dysbiosis, and people who consume a lot of alcohol, if they develop severe hepatitis, that is jaundice, where the bilirubin is rising, there is coagulation defect, and these patients are looking down the barrel. The 1 month survival is very dismal. Steroid is a treatment which controls the inflammation, but only 30-40% patients would be eligible for steroid treatment. And of those 30-40%, only 50% would respond. So there is a dire need of other treatment other than transplant, liver transplant.
Mhm.
So fecal microbiota transplant has emerged as one of the things. Again, dysbiosis is there inherently in people who drink alcohol. Alcohol is another acquired factor which can lead to altered microbiota in your gut. And again, that through this lipopolysaccharide increased permeability of the gut,
Mhm.
a lot of endotoxins are entering into your bloodstream. So these are known as PAMPs, that pathogen-associated molecular patterns, and that drives the gut inflammation. So in patients with liver disease, a lot of deterioration is supposed to be due to this gut permeability. So controlling the gut permeability is an option, and we did it for 5 patients, and we had very good results. We have published an abstract for this. But as I told you, there are two things that putting the cart before the horse, we do not know how it works.
Mhm.
The thing is that we do
But it
not have a
works.
system of how it
But you're
works, but
saying,
it
but
works.
it works. Yeah.
But it works. The thing is that people living in similar environment will have similar microbiome. So the question is of where do you get the stool donor from?
Mhm.
Normally, I mean, telling this idea to a very sick patient that we are going to transplant this poop into your patient, the relatives might get angry. Actually, you see, you are talking about a sick patient where you are talking
Yes.
about dismal survival, you are talking about liver transplant, and suddenly you come with this crazy idea of doing a fecal transplant. People really ask this question, doctor, are you joking?
Mhm.
So the thing is that the family donors are not very good donors, supposed to be not very good donors. Whatever we have done with family donors, because there is no there is no system of having these healthy donors. And there is no system of finding out which donor is going to be effective. If people say voluntary come out, if you look at the studies, there have been donors which have been termed as super donors because their gut
That was good.
microbiota was very effective, and people who received stool from them, the fecal material from them, they did better as compared to others. So We do not know, but there are two centers in India, the ILBS at New Delhi
Mm.
and another center in Cochin, the Lakeshore Hospital. They have kind of evolved in doing this, and they are doing it more in a more organized way. But all these requires a lot of dedicated efforts and all this. So I think due to some reasons we have not been able to pursue that. Constraints, logistical constraints are there, but yes, this is a very exciting field. Alcoholic hepatitis is one, and IBD, inflammatory bowel disease patients who are not willing to take biological agents with severe disease. Another, this is another non-drug treatment, which is very attractive, and a lot of people go for it.
Yeah, I guess once we improve the delivery part of it, I guess,
Yes, once you raise the awareness, once you donors are coming up, I mean, this is not an organ donation. I mean, people, what we say that young people, people from rural background who are not exposed to this smoking, alcohol, and kind of this processed food, they might be very good donors actually in our country. If you look at the people from rural background, they might be having very good bacterial flora, but we just need to create this awareness that they need to be tested, and how do we create a kind of supply chain of this. In US, you must be aware that poop pills are available where it is
that's what I was
kind of
getting to.
frozen, dried frozen, you just gulp the pill. So those things are there. I think with advancement in the recent paper from Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, nearly 120 patients, 60 each randomized in severe alcoholic hepatitis, I am talking about. They have done 60 patients FMT and they have shown that that is better than steroids. So that is phenomenal.
True. I mean, I think that's why once I think we normalize this discussion, I think then people are more open to it, right? I think
Yes, people
like
need
I
to understand that this is an option.
yeah, because it's not, you're not just doing it. It's I mean, I think the association with just poop being something people can't stand that. But if you think about it as a medical intervention, then I think
Yes,
and
yes,
normalize it, then I think it'll become much more available and I think more accepted as well. Uh,
yes.
and I think that's where the challenge is, right? Like always have to communicate certain things to our, to patients. And that's always, there are social norms and then there is medical interventions. And I think that's
Absolutely. Right now, there are people who are researching deep into this, and people with irritable bowel syndrome, they search for it, and they come to me also that I have seen that you have done these previously. So can you do this for me? And there, once we do not have a structured system and we cannot assure them a definite outcome, that what will happen. So doing it on an experimental basis for a day-to-day practice is not a good thing to do. If we have to do it, we should be doing it in a structured fashion, kind of studying it with their consent and fully explaining to them that this, we do not know how it works, but this is what you expect. That is the way to go ahead, having good multi-central trials, because again, the results which have been there, as I mentioned, from one center are not replicated by the other center, then that is a problem. There might be a lot of bias also in those things.
and if you take all the diseases, liver and gastric related diseases, which are the top three for which Indians come for treatment?
You see, liver, if you talk of liver disease, anything which persists will lead to liver cirrhosis. So that is one spectrum of liver disease, that people coming with liver cirrhosis. And the other spectrum, obviously fatty liver disease currently tops the charts in non-cirrhotic conditions. Also in cirrhotics who will be there, that will be for fatty liver disease with that has been renamed as metabolism associated steatotic liver disease. So NASH is now MASLD, 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 metabolic associated steatotic liver disease, metabolism associated. So that is one. And again, the other most common GI symptoms are of that of functional bowel disease, people with reflux, GERD, people with functional bowel disease, that irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, diarrhea. These are the most common diseases, but these are not necessarily the most serious diseases, the kind of life-threatening diseases which we talk of. So there is a whole lot of spectrum there. So if we look at diseases which are not very debilitating, which are not immediately life-threatening, and diseases which are life-threatening, then the causes and these things would be difficult. But as a whole, definitely fatty liver, GERD, IBS, these would be the top three, which
How do
constitutes the
patients
bulk of
know?
our practice.
Like if it is not a life-threatening disease, right? How do people know when to see a doctor, right? Because people might just say, yeah, पेट में कुछ गड़बड़ है or
So,
something. How do they
that
know?
is there for a person who is suffering from, say, GERD or uncontrolled irritable bowel syndrome. That is, I mean, even if it is not life-threatening, that is affecting his quality of life. So for him, that is the most serious problem. So at times, if you take the complaints of the patient non-seriously, they have a problem.
Mm.
So people, I mean, right now, there are, again, the two spectrum are that because of availability of information on internet, some people are too aware, too sensitized, and then there is a whole group of people who tend to ignore the symptoms. So, but I think any change from the normal should be consulted, because the key to any cure is early diagnosis.
Mm.
So, and the problem is that with, if I give you an example, that there are limited 5 or 6 symptoms which will be there in the most non-serious disease to the most serious disease, like upper abdominal discomfort, burning would be from non-ulcer dyspepsia or gastric reflux to stomach cancer. So this is the spectrum. But definitely, if you have very what we call as alarm features, like if you have rapidly falling body weight, if you have severe loss of appetite, if you are having low hemoglobin, again, there is something wrong, and that should be addressed as best as possible.
Because I think one of the big challenges in India is that because we have access to so much medical facilities, but people still don't come to a doctor quick enough, right? Like they come
Right.
much later.
So there is clearly a paradox there in India. I mean, we feel that, I mean, the thing is that the access to a super specialist is very easy. If
Mm.
you look at the Western countries, getting an appointment from gastroenterologist might take you a month at least.
Absolutely, yeah.
So here
One
they
is
can,
early, I think. Sometimes
here
it can take a few months.
yeah. One is very early,
Yeah.
I told you. And here, if you want to see a gastroenterologist at 8 p.m. in the night, probably you can see at least 5 or 6 of them would be still working at 8 p.m. in the night in Delhi, in a city like Delhi. So the access is not a problem. The problem is to go to the right place and the right person at the right time.
I often tell people that, it's not that if you go to a doctor, the problem comes. The doctor will be able to diagnose your disease faster and therefore
And
treat you faster
so
compared to like if you
here
wait.
what I
Yeah.
yeah, here what I feel the problem entirely is that there are different types of people who come with the prefixed ideas. If you ask them to get some investigations, then there are people who will get very miffed that, oh, you are asking for too many investigations. And then there are people who would insist, no, 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 you do everything for me, even if you try to explain to them rationally that, you see, we can follow this up and these things are required. So, but yes, a better dialogue, a better understanding, a better, I mean, kind of just developing this, that you follow what is being told, is very important. And again, the lure of alternative medicine, which is there in our country, that is also kind of very a distraction for people to follow what you are being told by a doctor.
So I was actually going to ask you that when we were discussing about inflammation, for instance, a lot of times you find that some influencers will reduce it to one problem that solves everything, right?
Yeah,
So do you think that there is a way to control that information that is probably not so great for the patients or the customers? It's okay to say that you can eat healthy or do otherwise, but to say that one particular diet is going to solve all your problems is
that
something.
is that is a big problem. Actually, there is no regulation. You see, all these on these platforms are completely unregulated. If you see the way we are being fed continuously on our Instagram, Facebook by these reels and all those things, promoting, say, gluten-free diet and all these things, there's a lot of misinformation there. So what I feel that the only way to counter this is to do what you are doing, that you have the right information reaching to the people. You cannot stop them. So
Correct.
what we can do is that we can try to reach out to more and more people with the correct information. So at least then that is becomes a person's choice to look at the reliability of the source from where it is coming. So I mean, if the will to stop those people who are making this misinformation spread, that comes in the domain of the government, that how can they decide to stop this. I mean, it's not that the government is not aware of it, but the problem is it is not easy to stop all this. So I think what you are doing and what others can, I mean, there is a lot of this thing, uh, this free YouTube and all these things are a blessing and also a problem, that you have all kinds of information. But yes, having the right information to counter this misinformation is the appropriate tool, which I feel.
I agree. I think I mean, there's some that regulations can do, but I think it's more about, having information. Sometimes people are just looking for information and they can't find
Yes,
it
yes,
because they're
yes.
finding it from.
So that is a very interesting thing. During the COVID times when we were all sitting at home, uh, I started recording short videos on YouTube. And the person who was just looking after my website, he said that started uploading those videos. And now I find that there are good number of subscribers, and I have been doing this regularly send to upload 5 minutes, 6 minutes videos on common GI diseases. And I think I have done around 150 videos which are there.
Wow.
They are in mixed Hindi and English. They are completely impromptu. We do not prepare anything. We just pick up a topic and I just rattle it out in one go in mixed Hindi and English. And I think I don't follow this. I am very poor at it, but I have been told that there are nearly 60,000 subscribers and nearly 5 to 6 million views. So
That's,
that is one way.
yeah.
And people do come to me with that yes, I saw this, and say things like hiatus hernia, which sometimes people are so scared, worried, and even to the extent that they are willing to get operated.
Mhm.
And I see quite a good number of patients with these problems who come to me, and some of them find solutions. Some of them, it is very difficult to find a solution to every problem. But again, that is the way with the question, which was that reaching out to people with the correct information.
I think I should probably write a blog on, all the doctors that I can find and what they do, so that we can send that as well, right? So if they know where to see that information, I think we will also be helping in little bit in terms of
Absolutely,
promoting.
spreading the right information is the you see, Second World War was just all about information war. Goebbels, the person who was the information minister of Hitler, he was the person who spread all the lies, and the lies spread faster than the truth.
I think that's an age we are kind of reliving in some
And
form. Yeah.
this is a era of post-truth. So you do not know what is true. And in the era of artificial intelligence, it is increasingly going to be more and more difficult. So that reliability quotient has to be built up. And I think it will take a lot of effort, but
True. So I think we were discussing a little bit in terms of, some medications that might not work for some individuals, right? So how
mm,
much of that pharmacogenomics do you feel is useful for, any of your and the whole, like the GI practice in effect, right? So we have a lot of drugs that are there, and we know some of them
I'll
don't work.
I'll start with an example. I'll start with an example of a drug called azathioprine. Azathioprine is an immunosuppressant drug, and azathioprine we use in patients with ulcerative colitis, patients with Crohn's disease, and they are used for very long terms. So there is a side effect of the drug, that these people can develop reduction in their TLC and DLC, that is known as cytopenias, and platelet counts, hemoglobin, all these counts can come down. So there is a way of predicting this, which is known as TPMT assay, a thiopurine methyl transferase assay, and a NUDT assay. These are the two tests. So these are as a gastroenterologist, for me, this is the most important pharmacogenomic test which we carry out to predict the response to azathioprine. And in people who are developing toxicity, you can go further and do xanthine oxidase to find out the shunts and all those things and reduce the dose and still go and use for this thing.
The
And
pharmacogenomics
the
is
other
the
aspect of it, so this is because of a particular enzyme. The other aspect of is that you have drugs, most of the drugs are being metabolized by cytochrome P50, different types of cytochrome P50s. So uh, P450s. So there again, there is the issue has been a little contradictory. The results have been a little contradictory. If we say, take again very common example of proton pump inhibitors, the acid suppressing drugs, the omeprazole, pantoprazole, those drugs. So these drugs are being metabolized by the cytochrome known as CYP2C19. That is the most common things. And it is known that in Asians and in Western world, this CYP2C19 is different. So the metabolism of drug is supposed to be different, but what has been shown that this does not ultimately affect the action of the drug. But in difficult situations like where you're not being able to eradicate H. pylori, then you start looking at these factors. But the problem is that these tests are not available readily. And then the third aspect of
pharmacogenomics or the
pharmacogenomics are not available readily.
we have a very affordable pharmacogenomics product. We look at
Yes,
170.
then
Yeah.
I mean, if you have, then that information is not with many people.
Okay.
I
So we need to do a
and
little bit more.
yeah, you need to put it across to the medical fraternity what is being offered and what can be practiced. So again, as I told you, the examples of azathioprine and this thing. So again, same is with some anti-tubercular medicine, say isoniazid. The response toxicities they can be prejudged, and then in the era of precision medicine and kind of again take if I take example of inflammatory bowel disease, there are a lot of biologicals. So how do you know that which patient will respond to this particular therapy? All the drugs have a across the board, they have a effectiveness of say 40 to 50%. So definitely the way to to predict that is to know about the genetic makeup and the pharmacogenomic this thing. So there is a lot of potential, but again, as I told you, the probably the problem here is that the number of tests are limited, and this is spread across the specialty. So probably the awareness, I would say, even among the doctors is not
Not as
there, is not as high, and mostly these tests are not very cost effective because already they add to the burden. Correct me if I am wrong. So what is the cost? I do not know. Say if I talk of NUDT assay, which I get regularly, it is 4,000 rupees, and patients who are spending money on lifelong treatments of chronic ailments for them, this amount also pinches. So
yeah.
but
So
there's definitely a lot of this thing goes into the understanding of metabolism and the way we respond to drugs. You're right that all these metabolite the way the drugs are metabolized are different in different people, and if there is a way to predict that, then definitely that is the way to move ahead in the era of precision medicine.
we have what we call as a Medica map. And what we are doing is we are looking at more than 175 drugs or so for different specialties. So it's not just GI related, but it's, and we find a lot of cardiologists and psychiatrists and some neuro that are using it much more than some of the other specialties.
Maybe
But I think what we do,
gastroenterology it is not very popular,
correct,
and I think another player which is artificial intelligence. With the advent of artificial intelligence, I mean I have some sketchy information that some people are using it to rationalize their prescriptions based on artificial intelligence, depending on to the pharmacogenomics and the drug to drug interaction. So I mean to put it to use, probably artificial intelligence would be a thing which would probably help the doctors to find out, because it is very difficult to remember all those
correct,
things.
correct. Yeah, but I mean, I often, when at least when I've been giving workshops or others, I think I keep telling people that it's not just the gene that makes a difference. I think when a doctor looks at you, they're looking at your, genetic this thing, but also you are looking at drug-drug interaction or drug-food interaction, and there are many other such factors. So I think
Yeah,
if
you're right. So I mean that is an area which needs to be explored, and when I would be willing to be uh, keen to learn more about this, but you know that this is the issue which we're talking about, connecting with the right information, because this goes beyond your routine day-to-day work. And so that is a value addition, and that is required, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so I think it will help the medical fraternity, but I think
Definitely.
it's an important piece. I often tell, like, even when we are looking at like longevity and others, I say that, see, we are one part of the puzzle, right? There is genetics or whatever. Then there's epigenetics, and there's a doctor or somebody who can actually guide you through this process. Otherwise, I
Definitely,
think
definitely.
we are missing out, because there's still things that none of us know
Definitely. There are a
perfectly.
lot of
Yeah.
ramifications. You see, choosing a lot of cancer drugs. So the drugs, the studies of receptors. So this ambit is very wide. है ना? This KRAS mutations and all these things to predict the right medicine for the right person. So this ambit is quite wide, and definitely one would be willing to learn and explore this area.
So have you done any genetic test? So is there anything that you would be curious to understand about yourself if you had to?
That is very important question. The pre-genetic counseling is very important in patients with, say, I would give you an example again from gastroenterology, patients with recurrent episodes of pancreatitis.
Mm.
So it is known that 10 to 15% patients would not have any defined cause, and then often these are young people in their early 20s, and the parents are very exasperated. And then if you offer them a genetic test, then again you have to tell them that this is a test which is being offered. So that kind of gives you your disease a name or a cause, but you cannot find a solution based on this. So if you are able to take this,
Mm.
then we'll definitely do this genetic test. And being involved in this area, you must be aware that pre-test counseling is very important. The information which you get might actually make your life more miserable if you are not able to handle this information, if you are not able to live with this information. So that is a very, very important thing. And again, the counseling aspect and direct causality. So this is again a huge area. I have seen some advertisements from hospitals which tells you that their predilection to develop certain cancers and all those things can be predicted. So definitely there are things there, but if you ask me, I won't get my genetic this thing, because this is like, if you look at it from entirely non-medical perspective, this would be like going to an astrologer and asking him what is going to be my future. So I would say no.
Not
I would
necessarily. I think, see, for instance, I think there is the part of about understanding disease, right? That could be one. But I think
absolutely. So
genetics can
if
help you.
if if there is a clinical context,
Yeah,
definitely yes. If
correct.
there is a clinical context, if I have a family member who has developed a particular disease, and that disease can have, and the prime example is the BRCA1, if that is there, then you have glaring examples of Angelina Jolie. So that is, but again, the thing is that are we as a society, or you cannot generalize this. The problem is that she knew that she had a BRCA1 positivity and she got bilateral mastectomy. So people cannot
Yeah,
to
that's
take
taken an
actions.
extreme case. I think that
That
was
is an
one
extreme
case.
case, but that is, I mean, you have to look at the practical aspect of it. How do you put that information to use? But definitely, if I have a disease which is running in my family, then definitely, yes, genetic tests are important. But for things like, say, IBD, ulcerative colitis, there are genes which are known. We see people in one family, brothers and sisters, developing ulcerative colitis. But the thing is that even if I do genetic tests for them, I cannot predict whether their children will develop these polygenic disorders, right?
Correct. Correct. So
So there
you
is
can
a
see if there's a risk, right? So I'm saying that, see,
so the
I'll give
day
you an example of my husband, right? So 10 years ago, we did his, what we call, as, since you mentioned astrology, we do have a product called Genome Patri, like a Janam Patri, right?
right, it is
Uh,
like that. I told you right in the beginning
no,
that
but so I'll
the
tell
fault,
you what,
the
yeah.
fault, dear Brutus, lies in our genes. I told you.
Right. But basically, this is what I thought I'll give this as an example, right? So when we did about when he was in his 40s, then we said it showed that he is likely to be a non-responder to a statin, showed that he'll have high triglycerides, and it showed that he will have some sort of a GI issue, right? Like, and we also said that he has lactose intolerance possibly. Now everything was fine. There was no problem. He's a very healthy eater. He's, exercises every day for an hour, does everything right. As he started getting closer towards 50, he started having some issues with his unexplained issues with his gut, right? So he couldn't explain it. He went to see some doctors. He got some steroids, didn't work for him. He did all that. Finally went to see another doctor who said, maybe milk is your problem, right? And then he remembered, he said, yes, it showed that he had lactose intolerance, but he's having very little milk, only in coffee or something like that. So finally, the doctor said, fine, stop it for 3 weeks, come back to me after 3 weeks. He never had to go back, right? Because that was really his problem. And I'm saying that those kind of things, if you're aware that this was there, you're likely to.
I'll give you another take on this. Lactose intolerance is very common in Asians because we stop taking milk after a certain age. So nearly 20-25% of Indian adults are lactose intolerant. And any person who comes to me with these symptoms of borborygmi and all these things with normal
That's a problem.
parameters of hemoglobin, albumin, the first piece of advice which we give them is to stop lactose. We also offer them to get them tested for lactose intolerance, which is a very simple breath test, but the issue is that costs around 10,000. Many people say that it is better for me to opt for a lactose-free diet, or if you are very fond of milk, you can switch to a lactose-free milk, or there is a lactase tablet. So the solutions and the context.
Yeah,
So,
but I'm saying all these things, if let's say a doctor knew about it, they're likely to tailor them upfront, right? Like instead of having to go through the challenges, and you don't have to.
there the problem is that if you have a lot of information, so synthesizing all that information and putting it to use is not very easy. So definitely there is a huge need for it if you are able to predict. But the challenge is that the tests currently which are there to predict this, they have to be validated very well.
They are. I think most of them are.
Before you put to use, because if you take another example, people come to us with a lot of food intolerance tests, right?
The
Food
blood
allergy
tests.
panels. There are a lot very costly tests, and that tell you that you cannot eat bhindi, you cannot eat chana, you cannot eat peanuts. I mean, these are not validated tests.
Correct.
But the issue is that literature will give you the kind of free internet which is there and the free publishing, this predatory publication system which is there. They will have published literature to support their system, their work, that yes, this is a validated study. So there you have to separate the grain from the chaff, and then you have to use your clinical acumen and put it in the right perspective, right? So, but definitely, if anything, that is, you see, that is what science is all about, to question, and if it is replicable, if you can do it, I can also do it, then only we accept it. And as a clinician, I would always say that when we should be open to ideas, you can never say no to anything, but to be able to use it, you should be convinced that the process by which this has been deduced is absolutely right. That is the only thing.
Yeah.
So if I don't know, I don't say no.
Yeah.
I say that I do not know.
Correct.
And the current era, there are so many things still we do not know, and the willingness to learn is what is important. So right, so that is there.
So let me give you a hypothetical situation, right? Like if you take, for instance, if you had to choose for yourself, right? I'm just giving an example. One is where you want to understand, how you look at metabolized food, exercise, sleep, disease risk. That is one, right? Like that would be something like a genome patri, which looks at a lot of information. Then you have pharmacogenomics, which is looking at how you respond to drugs, which is very clear. Like, you're likely to, it's based off certain guidelines and very clear indication of what is there. The third is like a microbiome, where you are understanding your gut. And I kind of think I know what you're going to respond, but let me ask. And then there is one where you're looking at epigenetics, and that's still evolving in terms of your aging process of each of these. So if you were to look at all of these, and I'm not taking any clinical ones over here, because we're just saying that you're, as a healthy individual, what would you, if you had to choose one of them, what would be where would your interest levels be in that?
You see, all of these are very important, but currently you see the gut microbiome is the area which is the most close to getting therapeutic potential. So definitely, gut microbiome is the field which where you would enter. But as you said, medicine is so vast, medicine is so complicated, so you cannot look at anything in isolation.
Mm.
All these factors are very important, and if you show me completely unequivocal evidence that anything which works, then why not? At least I will be able to give my patient an option. But currently, I think gut microbiome is one thing which is the most exciting field to
I
many of.
kind of guessed that that is what you would be interested in.
That is what
Correct.
we have done also, and rest of the things, if I do not know, when the field is so vast, then I can't put my finger on that.
So I think I know I've run out of the time that I asked for you, but I have some rapid fire questions.
Sure,
So if you can get to that.
sure, sure.
Sure. So what is the weirdest myth about gut health that you've heard from your patients?
So, I mean, truth is stranger than fiction. So, people who come with all kinds of this thing, and I always, people with irritable bowel syndrome have got the most strange myths that whenever they have gas, their hands starts trembling and things like that. And so, and the most important thing which needs to be debunked is that people feel that if they have this bloating and this thing, there is something wrong with their liver. And many of my patients actually get upset with me that probably you don't know anything,
You
that
don't know.
they think that I am ignorant of this fact that his liver is wrong. So trying to convince him that the liver is not wrong, you are putting your thoughts in the wrong direction. So that is one of the most common things that people come with the fact that my मेरा liver खराब हो गया डॉक्टर साहब, मुझे ना बहुत गैस बनती है. So this connection between gas and liver is the most common thing which people come up with. But there is no end to imagination. So the weirdest would be very difficult to recollect and
Come
say,
up
but
with.
people with come with all sorts of imagination. That is
Yeah. So I guess, the gut influences the brain in some form, and then they ask.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Okay. So which region in India do you think has the most gut-friendly cuisine, in your opinion, if there is such a
I,
thing?
I would say that the South Indian food, which uses a lot of fermented foods,
Hmm.
that is the kind of this thing which
Like
is
idli,
most
dosa.
healthy. And you have a lot of fish in their diet. And if you look at people from, say, Malayalis descent, Kerala, so I think they are the ones, if you look at the Kerala people very carefully, they are the ones who are the fittest, long hairs, thick hairs, and lean and thin. So there is something about that diet which I feel, South Indian diet, which has got a lot of diversity. There's a lot of seafood in that diet, and there is a lot of fermented food in that diet. So yes, that I would suggest. And definitely the North Indian staple with this chole bhature and uh, dahi and parathas. So that is the kind of other end of the spectrum.
I agree. Yeah. So if you could test one famous person's microbiome, who would that be?
It has to be Mahatma Gandhi. He lived a very frugal life. He was very fit. He was until quite late age very active, and his, I mean, the goat milk, the fabled goat milk, and all those things. Their goat milk is known to have some different properties. So definitely Mahatma Gandhi, if I have to pick one name.
That's great. Maybe we can take one of his, like, I think his grandsons or somebody and see. Maybe that, but
They
I
have
think
moved out to different parts of world,
correct,
so but
correct. And
definitely
also their eating lifestyle is very different
yes,
from.
but definitely.
So, what is the funniest WhatsApp forward someone has sent you about gut health?
That is same about as the first question. People come with all sorts of this thing. I try to remain away from such queries because responding to such queries on WhatsApp is kind of dangerous. It's
Yes.
because unless and until you apply your mind and respond to this. But yes, people, as I told you that since I have been, I have this quite uh, popular this YouTube channel. People do send me a lot of messages, which I tend to ignore. I just advise them to come in person because WhatsApp is not the right medium. Any online medium is not the right medium for
Mm.
consultation. There is no substitute for in-person consultation.
And I think you answered this already because that's what you started with, that if you were not a doctor, what would you be doing?
Yes, I have very varied interests. So still I read a lot of books and both Hindi,
History or
English literature. Yes, yes. So I have varied interests in life, and when to keep yourself engaged and to keep your brain fertile, to keep your thought process going, it is very important to do things which are out of your away from your normal this thing to challenge your brain. It is very important, and to keep that stimulus alive.
does that also influence the gut? I'm just asking.
Maybe,
Maybe.
maybe.
Okay. So can you draw the digestive system with your eyes closed?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. No doubt about it.
Okay. And have you ever Googled or done a chat GPT or whatever AI based things for any of your own symptoms? No.
Not really. But being doctor is a very difficult thing when you are in the third year and fourth year of your training. Probably that is the time when you feel that every disease which you see, you start feeling that I might be also having this problem. So,
Yeah. I think
so
my nephews are both young doctors. So both of them, I remember, one is already graduated, the other one, and he kept having all kinds of issues. And I think
oh,
once my
that
sister
is
even took him
uh,
to a doctor, and then the doctor said, "Are you in
those,
your third year of medicine?
so
I
that
think
is
you
known as
have
the
to
third
go."
year syndrome.
Yeah,
That is known
yeah.
as the third year syndrome.
So that's a real syndrome then, the third
Yes,
year
it
syndrome.
is.
So if your life were a Bollywood movie, which actor would you play out?
Actor.
And what title would that be? So let's say you make a movie on any movie.
So I really don't know if you talk of doctors, you have some movies on doctors like Dr. Kotnis ki Amar Kahani. That is one of the movies. Dr. Kotnis is one of the doctors who worked in China, and if you go to China, there are still memorials for him. But yes, I would not take myself too seriously being a doctor. I would rather say that living a wholesome existence is much more important, and there are many other facets of your own individual life, and we all have these heroes and this thing in our mind, but I would not make a hero out of myself. I just want to do my work honestly and would not pinpoint that which actor would I really pinpoint to do this.
So if do you think that AI doctors will actually be doing complex surgeries in the next 10 years, or is this more like
Surgeries, I mean, again, artificial intelligence is a and kind of there are first responders to anything which is there, and there are definite uses of certain things which are there. But to me, I mean, if you look at it, human empathy can never be replaced. That is what I feel. By at least touching a patient's tummy, even if it is for just completing a formality, it is not a formality. It is a kind of develop some confidence in the between you and the patient that yes, somebody has seen me. And if you ask me that question, that would you ever trust an artificial intelligence-based diagnostic system? I would not. But yes, I would take a lot of help from artificial intelligence tools in helping, say, if pharmacogenomics is, I feed that
synthesizing
that
knowledge?
it saves my time, it gives me a quick information, then definitely yes. But
I,
ultimately, I would rely on natural stupidity much more than artificial intelligence. So
that's a great way of putting that. So if your life was a theme song, if your life had a theme song, what would that be? And do you sing, by the way?
yes, everybody sings.
Yeah.
So, but how well or how bad, that is the question. So I mean, if you look at the theme song, if you remember, if you watch old movies, there is a movie Hum Dono by of Devanand, I think, and there is a song which is not, by the way, very good medical message in that, because the protagonist Devanand keeps on smoking in that, but the lines which go that मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया हर फिक्र को धुएं में उड़ाता चला गया, but धुएं को उड़ाना is not smoking, by the way, but yes, to
Correct.
just laugh off your worries, that is the my mantra of life, and that is what. forgetting things is very important. So putting your worries past. We talk about all these microbiome and all these things, but I always tell people that remaining happy is one of the things which is a thing which we can do at our free will. No genetic makeup is required, no microbiome is required.
So
So
what do
have
you
fikr
do
ko
to
do,
so what do
right?
you do to be happy, right? Is there some activity or
So
meditation or
there are two things. Meditation again is becomes very difficult. So I always say that if you like what you are doing, right? If it becomes a work for you, then it will become a burden. So if you like to what you are doing, then you will always remain happy. And then the second statement is a more philosophical statement is that if you remain happy with small things, then you will always remain happy
I
rather than if you are looking for very big things. So every day, even if we make very small diagnosis without say any investigation or these things, that gives you happiness, and that is what which keeps you going. So that is what I will say, that finding happiness in small things in life is very important to keep you going.
That's great. And any word of advice for and all the people out there, if you had to give them some general tips or something that they can, at least think about their own health or gut health specifically.
So, I mean, health is usually as the World Health Organization. Incidentally, tomorrow is the WHO day,
Right,
which
right.
is celebrated as the World Health Day. So health is not the absence of a disease, is not the presence of a disease. It's a absence of physical and good physical and mental well-being. So that is very important that you take care of yourself, be responsible towards yourself. Anything done in moderation is okay, like having a drink occasionally in a fortnight, that is okay. But if you start drinking, that becomes a problem. So anything is moderation is okay. And obviously, you have a lot of help out there. Whenever there is something abnormal, go to the right trusted source, because the problem right now, as you mentioned in one of those things, that so-called influencers, and in this era of marketed truth, it is very important that you go to the right person and develop a trust, that once you go there, then trust to whatever is being told to you. That is very important.
I think that's great. And with that, I wanted to thank you so much. I think Dr. Piyush Ranjan, this has been an amazing conversation, a little bit longer than I think you had hoped for, but I'm sure that
Yeah.
the
I think
people.
you can edit that this thing, and we'll look forward to the final
Great.
version of it. And thank you so much.
Thank you
It
so
was a
much.
pleasure talking to you, and I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And we don't edit, so we will play it as
It
it
will
is.
go unfiltered, so
All
that
right.
is okay.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Bye.